I'm always very excited to talk to a fellow entrepreneur because I think we can relate.
Mostly failed, right?
Well, I was just going to say that. We can relate on that level where it's the pain of going through businesses. I started North Star last year, but truthfully, this is not my first business venture. But that's normal. That's par for course. That's how you learn and you grow. And it only takes one to make it big, right?
Yep, exactly.
I'm going to get into sort of your entrepreneurship. I see you're co-founder of Abide Analytical, founder of Flywheel Bioconversion. We'd love to know what that is, and owner of Twin Cities Biotech Consulting. So
these are all kind of like starter low operations, things that are kind of sliding along.
20 years of Bio-Techne. I think you were in a lab for most of that period, right?
When I was at Bio-Techne, I started out in protein research and development and eventually became the administrative manager of research and development. A position opened in the process engineering group to manage that department. And at that point, they were focused on risk assessments, failure analysis, looking at mechanisms why products were failing in the field. So I took over management of that department and really during that time focused a lot of the department on analytical studies, looking in depth at our field failures to understand why they failed, what was going on structurally. We were able to receive funding to build out to a pretty much state-of-the-art analytical facility. And that eventually spun out as a core facility that served all of the Bio-Techne sites, as well as several other corporations, assisted sales in promoting sales values and kind of promoting the company. I moved to the Scientific Research Consortium, which is DBA, the DBA is aminoacids.com, I think about 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was part of a transition plan for the founder and CEO of a company moving into retirement. And that connection was because at Bio-Techne, we were customers of aminoacids.com. So we did some of our outsourced analysis through this company. And so I moved there about 4 years ago. I've had a lot of, call it side gigs that are interesting to me. I was involved in a startup called Blue Water Farms that was looking at first developing an aquaculture method for growing walleye. They developed interest in developing animal feeds, or fish feeds actually. And from there, we started a small operation growing insects, developing insect meal as a feed. The specific insect we were looking at was specifically yellow mealworm. But during that time, we really got interested in soldier fly. So soldier fly is a really robust insect that will eat almost anything and convert it into fertilizer.
Really?
And we started doing some preliminary projects with them. A major grocery distributorship in the Twin Cities that serves about a 5-state area is interested in building a facility to upcycle their produce waste. I'm involved with that group trying to develop a strategy to do that. Of course, anything you throw out in a grocery is 100% waste and is lost revenue. And they're interested in seeing if there's a way that they can take that waste, because all groceries have significant waste, and turning it into a value-added product.
As in what, keeping on a fertilizer angle?
Well, there's two dimensions. One is the actual larvae of the black soldier fly, which is one of the best chicken feeds you can get. It's an extremely robust chicken feed. A good chicken should be eating insects. Their larvae are a really great feed for chickens. In addition, the waste product is really, really great agricultural fertilizer. I'm gotten really interested in the whole idea of upcycling insect waste into fertilizer, especially now with Minnesota, and looking at robust organic fertilizers that are permissible for growing cannabis plants in aquaponics.
I don't want to bring this up maybe at the detriment of my country, being a Canadian, but you've heard recently with the tariffs, with the potash.
Yes.
Actually, Canada instilling tariffs around that. And I didn't realize that American farmers, I think 90% of them use potash in terms of fertilizer.
It's a huge detriment to American farmers, particularly in high-intensity agriculture like corn and soybean. Losing that potash stream is extremely damaging. And so there's no replacement for it.
Not even a solid, what's it called? Black solid,
Black, so
black
that's not going to
soldier
be able
fly.
to be, that's not going to be a viable option for farmers that are growing 10,000 or 100,000 acres. The value in these fertilizers are really going to be in greenhouse operations.
I guess it'd be hard to scale up.
This industry is actually in existence in western Minnesota and the Dakotas. A company called Chapel Farms has begun building black soldier fly grow facilities adjacent to the corn ethanol plants. So they're taking the DDGS, that's the dried distiller's grain, the byproducts of corn fermentation. That's a huge market in the United States, but it's very low value. It sells for dollars a ton. And so
Oof.
these companies are looking at ways of upcycling that waste into higher value fertilizers, for example.
To the advantage of Canada, I guess potash is still needed. So,
Oh, it is.
that's
It is.
good news for us. What drives you, Mark, to do all these side hustles?
I got a text from a friend of mine yesterday from Psychology Today. Someone had done a study on personalities of highly intelligent people. And I'm not saying that I'm highly intelligent, but I have the personality thereof. And the characteristic of that is an exuberance for trying things. And that's very much how I am. I love doing new things. I admit I get bored easily. I don't want to do the same thing constantly day in and day out. And I kind of thrive on the polymath type approach to life.
Even at your 20-year stint at Biotech, you've had many roles within Bio-Techne.
It made building my career difficult, but then became kind of the driving force in my career. I was on that organization that did corporate training and developing educational content. And one of the things that I learned as a student many years ago is that I'm a very bad classroom student. Textbook education, lectures, they don't sit well. I'm very much a kinetic learner. I'm a hands-on learner. And that's what I do. It's been a guidance for most of my career.
Or kindred spirits in that sense. Do you find, is it a part of your personality to try new things? Do you think it's not being afraid to fail type thing, knowing
Well,
that you will?
yeah, I mean, there is a part of that. Yes, most ventures have failed. But the reality is that every time I do one of those ventures, I learn something new and I feel like I get better. And that's really important. The biggest failure we've had recently was that we were in the running to build a testing lab to serve the Minnesota cannabis industry. My partner and I chose to leave that effort. As an aside, we had the funding lined up, we had the business plan, we had the interest, and we had the support. But it came down to our concern about the state and how the state was operating the venture and how that would create a significant business risk just in how they were structuring it. And we decided that, again, this one was not a business we could bootstrap. The costs are significant. We would have
Sure.
been incurring significant debt, and we decided we didn't want to take on that level of risk. I did not really want to lose my home in the event of.
Understandably.
When you think about people growing cannabis, I'll tell you a little story. You picture kind of the, hey, dude, you know, personality.
Well, it's not
And
like that anymore, I'm sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
these people are amazingly creative and vocal and just interesting, smart people. And it's been a pleasure. And I still talk to them. I still work with them. We have crossover interests from my experience building labs and working in regulated industries. I went to a conference maybe 2 years ago related to cannabis startup. I was speaking to a group that were growers, and on first outset, physical appearance, they hit all of the buttons for being, oh crap.
Hey, dude, kind of guy.
But went to them and they
Yeah.
had solid business plans. They had done deep Six Sigma analysis on failure approaches. They had just a profound understanding of the industry. They were able to talk in depth on business ventures and business approaches and philosophies of business. And it showed me that, again, you can't judge a book by its cover. There are some tremendously intelligent people in this industry. The Hey Dude group isn't really what is going on right now.
It's great to see that industry evolve. I don't know about Minnesota, but in Canada, a couple years ago when it first broke out, it was kind of a gong show,
Mhm.
and the Hey Dudes were everywhere trying to
Yep.
start up their labs. But actually, I was going to ask you how different it is from Canada. Like, is recreational cannabis shops now? I mean, especially if you walk downtown Toronto, there seems to be one on every second street corner.
It's going to be governed by the state because cannabis is still illegal in the United States. It's still a Schedule One drug. So the consequence of it being a Schedule One drug is nothing can cross the state border. Every industry is state specific and every industry is operate under state guidelines. Overnight, if the federal government decided to shut it down, they could just order it closed because
Mm-hmm.
it is, but they've chosen to not enforce federal regulations. So it's a state-driven industry, and some states are going to be tightly regulated. They're only going to allow a certain number of dispensaries or manufacturing sites or grow sites within certain municipal areas. In Minnesota, it appears that the individual municipalities will be allowed to uh, block uh, structures, and they have the power to regulate where these businesses are going to be located. You go to a state like Michigan, and Michigan has an abundance of dispensaries. I was driving through Michigan last fall, and I was driving through some very small towns, sub 2,000 people, and there would be multiple dispensaries located next door to each other.
Yep, that's almost kind of like how it is here. And it's spread not only downtown now, it's spread to the suburbia. So tell me about your recent adventure here with aminoacids.com. How's that going?
It's great. I describe it as a boutique analytical firm. We're a small company. We focus on a few core areas, but we have a broad customer base. Our customers range everywhere from biofuels and biodiesel to food. The cell culture based meats industry has been really valuable to us, all the way to biopharma. Our company was built out of physiological diagnostics. We really started out doing clinical studies, but now a lot of our business is in the area of biopharma, cell culture media, cell growth. That's actually where the food industry came in, the cell culture based foods.
And you supply the world right now, or you're
We
sticking
do.
with North America?
We have about 550 active customers, and they range anywhere from clustered in the United States, a lot based in California and the East Coast, customers in the UK, Singapore. We have some business in China, although the regulations recently on biotechnology between the US and China has harmed that industry, uh,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
that business sector.
I mean, you seem to have been mainly focused on the scientific side of things throughout your
Mhm.
whole career, Mark.
Yep.
Was there a left field moment in your path
There
that you could talk
was
about? That's
no
I'm interested.
the couple of things. One is really understanding business flow. Coming into, again, this was a small company and it had never done a lot of cost analysis, cost of goods sold. So when I came in, that was one of my first exercises was to figure out how to do that and
Mm-hmm.
start
Mm-hmm.
looking at our pricing tier and adjusting some pricing, things that maybe we were charging a little bit too much for, things that we weren't charging enough, and kind of normalizing our prices. Another thing that has been different for me is the whole marketing thing. When I would go to scientific meetings in the past, I would be there for the science.
Yep.
And now when I go into scientific meetings, I am there to sell product, sell
Yeah.
services, and that is really a big transition. It's a totally different philosophy. It's changed the type of meetings that I go to. Yes, I go to some true scientific meetings, but I also go to a lot of B2B type meetings. And so it's changed how I think a lot. When I would go to a scientific meeting and we'd be talking about, oh, we need this and that, I'd be like, oh, how can we do that? That would be, oh, I just have to do this, this, and this. And now my first question is, can I do this and still make a profit?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally different angle for the business, for
Yeah.
sure. Are you enjoying it? Because I know a lot of people wouldn't be caught dead selling in sales.
I
Is this something you're learning
so
that to enjoy?
uh, I'm not a particularly social person. I'm a little bit of an introvert, and so I have to force myself. When I go to meetings, I was joking with some of my team yesterday that I book to arrive the day before and leave the day after. A lot of people arrive the morning of and fly out that evening because I need a little bit of time to curl up in a ball uh, under a blanket and recover from social involvement. I've learned how to, fake it till you make it. And I've definitely learned how to fake it.
Well, I mean, you've been in the industry and in the business for so long that you have a lot of credibility, and I think
And it helps that
customers see that.
I've started to know people. And that
Yes.
helps a lot. You go into a meeting and you start talking to someone and you realize that you have common connections. Because I've been in this industry for 30 years. And you may not necessarily know someone at the meeting, but someone that knows someone at the meeting.
Yes, that is almost just as important
Yeah.
as credibility is knowing the people that know who you're talking to.
And
That's a big one.
and it's always been my viewpoint is if you can't do it correctly and you can't do it well, you shouldn't do it. And so that goes into what I feel is my credibility, that I am trusted, that I will give you an honest opinion whether I think we can do it. And if we think we can do it and then we start failing and we realize we're in trouble, I'll give you an honest assessment that no, we're not going to be able to do this. Let me help you find someone that can.
I think you nailed it. At the end of the day, all customers want is authenticity, honesty. If you try to kind of deceive them in any way and just to get that first sale, you might get that first sale, but guess what? You're
You
not going
won't
to
get,
get another one.
you're not going to get
You're
another
not
one.
going to get
And
another one.
honestly, your first sale is usually a loss leader. By the time it takes you to understand the customer's needs and get a data report that's suitable to them, I mean, you really don't make money on the first sale. You
Yeah,
make the
you're right.
follow-ups.
And typically the first sale, depending on what you're selling, if it's not instruments, it's probably like a really small
It
try
is.
sample trial sale
Yep,
anyway.
yep.
So
They're sending
yeah,
for us again. We're a testing lab. They're sending us a couple of small samples to see if it works.
yeah.
You can't survive as a business by one-offs. You need return customers.
Is that how your aminoacids.com is trying to differentiate yourselves? Is just the quality of the work and the
That's
results and
exactly what we do. We have, you know, we
service?
have we have customers that have been faithful to us for over 30 years and customers that treat us as part of their company. And that's really important to us. We're troubleshooting for one of my clients right now, some data that didn't make sense. And I sent him an email this weekend, very honest. Here's where I think something might have gone wrong. We
Hmm.
can't really prove it. And these are just some hypotheses and what we've done to make sure that the data is solid. And the customer came back and he said, we absolutely trust your judgment because your company is the most solid that we've ever worked with.
Awesome.
And we provide quality work. We provide it as quickly as possible. We may not be as fast as some customers. We're not the cheapest in the industry. We constantly shop our competitors and we try to be in the same ballpark, but we're not the cheapest. And that's intentional. We can't check off those other boxes and be the cheapest.
I mean, that old saying, you get what you pay for,
Yep.
rings true no matter what industry you're in. And I think that's something missing in the corporate world today is that it's more of a short-term thinking right now
Yep.
versus understanding the long game, especially if you're a publicly traded company. You're judged on the quarter now. It's just insane now.
One of the first things that I had said to my employees during the COVID boom, because almost every company in the biotech sector just had exploding sales during
Absolutely.
COVID,
Yep.
was that we're not going to pay attention to the COVID trend. We're going to take our sales and our expected sales growth immediately pre-COVID and extrapolate through. Because we know that the COVID bump was a blip on the radar. And I think we see a lot of companies after a lot of large biotech companies after COVID struggling and stumbling because they couldn't sustain the COVID level sales. And yes, there's a lot of pressure when you're a publicly traded company, but I felt that one of the failures in the industry was that not enough executives said to shareholders and investors, look, this is an aberration. We're not going to treat this as the baseline. Things are going to go down, sales are going to go down, and we're going to readjust. And I really do believe that while it would have been a negative message up front, I think that some of these companies would have weathered COVID better had they just been honest with their investor. And the investors knew this, they just chose not to recognize it. If they would have been honest to their investors and say, don't plan on 60% growth year over year. That's not going to happen.
Seems like common sense, doesn't it? But I've been talking to people in the industry and even just the sales targets. The expectation is COVID.
Yeah.
the
And
COVID sales or
yeah, and
shortly below
and
that, but
that's and
still,
that's
it's not.
not it's not a realizable goal. And I mean, honestly, the economic cost of COVID, nor should we ever want it to be the goal. And if a company is recording, 8% growth or 9% growth year over year, that's great. That's great. That's wonderful. Boom years, they're not sustainable.
Couldn't agree with you more. What are you betting on us getting another COVID
My personal
in the
feeling
future?
is it's almost a certainty, and I don't think it's all going to be all that far out. I'm particularly concerned about bird flu because of how easily spread it is and how we have seen it hop to either agricultural animals, cows, for example, or hop to humans. It seems to evolve quickly. All of the flu viruses have very high rates of mutation, and concerned that it may come from that direction.
I think humanity has learned our lesson in terms of generating quality vaccines much
Yep.
faster now. I
Yep.
think it's probably even
Well,
better than,
I'm
yeah.
not sure if we've learned our lesson on that.
Well, that was one of the better odds, but where I was going is that as humans, I know in terms of like the corporate world and the executive expectations, we probably haven't learned from COVID. We're probably going to fall back into our ways of
I think
expectation.
I think that very often we are. I really hate drawing the analogy because of the political implications on it, but I think that in a lot of ways humanity acts en masse like sheep. You'll have individual thinkers who will try to steer the game, but for the most part, people are going to respond, and their response is going to be not predictable, but usually irrational.
Absolutely. And when it does strike, I'm sure that it's going to act differently than COVID, right?
Oh,
That virus is,
absolutely.
so it's going to be a whole other new challenge.
It is.
Do you have something that you can share? Let's just say someone trying to get into the life science industry or the scientific community now, fresh after grad school. Do you have any advice or something that you've learned over the years that you can tell that person?
Listen, just listen and listen. I don't care if you just finished a PhD with a Nobel laureate and you're entering the biotech industry, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Uh, and listen to those people who have a bachelor's degree but have been in the industry for 30, 40 years. They know the feel for the industry, and just absolutely listen to what's going on, absorb as much as you can. And it goes right back into the basic concept of evolutionary biology: adapt or die. Assess your situation, adapt to that situation. It's okay to have opinions and it's okay to try to steer a course, but be prepared to adapt.
Do you think that the game has changed with AI now for the next 10 years in our industry? What are your
You
thoughts around
know,
that?
I am cautious with AI. A few weeks ago, Elon Musk was quoted as saying that AI has assimilated the entire depth of human knowledge. I don't disagree with that. I really think that the ability for the AI to scan and accumulate information, that's probably fairly correct. The challenge, though, is that AI doesn't know how to think yet. You know, if you've ever posed questions in AI and asked it to derive something for you, it makes a lot of mistakes, and you need to be a judicial user. It also, and this has been well characterized, it hallucinates. One of the more fun things to do in AI is to pose a question where you introduce a lie. It's not true, and have AI talk about it, and then interrogate asking about something that would involve knowledge of that question. And your AI algorithm is probably going to return that as truth. Do I think that AI is bad? I don't. I think actually AI is going to be the future of a lot of our industry. I'm actually in a collaboration right now with a company called MFX Technologies and Ptolemy Biosciences. They're both based in the UK, and we're helping them develop AI models for optimizing cell culture for CAR T therapies.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so there's definite applications. I don't want to say it's not fit for use or ready for their A game, but it's got to be monitored and it's got to be driven. AI is a child right now. It's an infant and it needs to learn. And the people that are utilizing and driving AI have to be part of that process.
I think the key word in your statement there, can't think yet, is the word yet.
Yep.
And you got to think how it's going to look like 50 years from now,
Yep.
where kids are growing up with AI. I mean, in my opinion, the university or the way we teach kids now at colleges and universities has got to drastically change. I feel it's like already behind. The more that the students are incorporating AI in their thought
Yeah.
process, the better, the more advantageous.
Even here, and you hear about students who are failing classes for using AI and writing their papers. My opinion, there is no problem with using AI if you are using AI as guidance. I can sit here for hours building a framework for a protocol or a public statement or something. Or I can go into AI and tell it what I want, and it'll generate a terrible document with a good outline.
Hmm.
I take the outline. I
Yeah.
say, yeah, it hit the 5 points that I needed to cover. I didn't consider this completely, but here are my most important points. I'm going to take this outline and I'm going to build my document now. And I can generate that document in a quarter of the time now because I'm using another tool to help me design it.
Hmm.
Now, if I were to take the actual document it created, it would be a laughing stock, but I can use it as a tool.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Speaking to a fellow person that loves to try new things and is adventurous in that sense, I get the sense that you're optimistic about AI and that it's going to do good for us at
I
the end of the
am.
day.
I'm apprehensive now because I think that we're probably jumping the gun on some things. I personally will not get into an AI driven car. But
Not yet.
the idea of AI air traffic control scares the crap out of me. But do think that it is the future.
And the future is bright. Let's just leave it at that
Yeah.
on a positive note.